Okay, should be recording. You're all set. You want to start off? Thanks, Sandesh. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you. All right. Welcome, everyone. We are on the 16th session today for Journey Builder Bootcamp. And this is part of the deep dive series where we go in, dive deep into one of the topics. And the topic today is custom activities in Journey Builder. This was originally supposed to be about a month back. I apologize for the delay, but here we are. Just a quick thought about the series in general. This is a bootcamp for all Trailblazers. You know, we had a series at the beginning about the fundamental concepts in Journey Builder. And now, like I said, this is the deep dive series. We've already done 10 plus sessions. It might have even been 30. It's been going on for a while, but hopefully it is informative for everybody. And I am Sandesh. I am a developer here at Cervelo. We help clients build data and digital solutions. We've been at it for more than a decade now, mostly in the Salesforce ecosystem, like Privacy Center and, of course, Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And I've been with Cervelo for about 3 years now, and mostly in a developer's capacity, but I do a variety of roles here and there. Okay. With that out of the way, let's start with today's agenda. So we'll begin with introduction to custom activities, like what they are, what they're supposed to do, what they look like, what they are essentially under the hood. And then we'll look at something called post-monger events. And if you don't know what post-monger is, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it in the introduction. And then we'll look at how to install these activities in Journey Builder. Then we'll look at the anatomy of an activity, like what it consists of, what parts does it have, what parts do we need to care about if we want to set them up correctly. Then we'll look at how data flows in Journey Builder in general and what kind of syntax we need to use if we need to get data in and out of that custom activity. Finally, and this is more advanced, but sometimes it's required because of compliance, but we also want to make sure that our activity, the activity that we build is secure, and not everybody can use our APIs publicly, so that if something happens in our activity application, then we know that it's Journey Builder that is the source of that activity and not any other application. And we can do those through JSON Web Tokens. We'll talk about that at the end. Then finally, the star of the show is going to be Logger. I'm going to demo a custom activity that we built for demo purposes, and it will show data binding both ways, meaning it will take data from Journey Builder and push it to an external application. It will also pull data from an external application and then use it in other activities down the line. You can see here the overall journey that we'll be going through today. Right? There will be a custom activity called Logger, and a decision split that decides on a variable that is outputted by the Logger custom activity. And based on that split, you either wait for a day, run that activity again, or you immediately update a data extension and then send an email using a code that is generated in an external system. And the journey is for demo purposes, right? It might not be a crazy use case, but it does show all the possibilities of pushing data out and pulling data in from an external system, which I think is the most important job of an activity, right? If it cannot interact with the data, it's most likely not very useful. And here on the bottom right, you can see the UI that we built for Logger. Pretty minimalistic UI. But again, the purpose is to demonstrate all the features and functionality of a custom activity. So it shows that you can have you can do field mappings, you can allow your marketers to select what fields to pass through dynamically for first name, last name, and any other configurations that you might want. Cool. And I know you'll have a lot of questions about this, so please post them in the chat. If we can't get to them today in the session, we will make sure to answer them through other channels, upload them with the session, with the deck, or answer them in some other means. Thank you. Okay. Now, what are custom activities? They are, we all know the standard activities in Journey Builder. There are different types, the entry sources, messages, there are decision activities. There are also customer update activities. Custom activity is something that you build if you want to extend or customize Journey Builder. If you have a custom requirement, say you want to make a payment in an external system, you want to build a event registration system, or maybe you just have a ticketing system outside a Marketing Cloud and you want to connect to that and integrate that seamlessly in a customer journey, right? A lot of the things that you might be able to accomplish these with other methods, but it wouldn't be as seamless as building a custom activity and integrate that directly in the journey. For example, you can think of using SFTP to connect to an external system, doing an ETL to load data, right? But again, it wouldn't be as fun. What custom activities are essentially are web applications that are hosted externally but integrated with Journey Builder. And it runs in an iframe. So in the picture here, you can see that the Marketing Cloud Canvas, the shell of it, runs on jbinteractions.s1 because that's the stack that we're on, and marketingcloudapps.com. This is where this web application, the Journey Canvas itself, is hosted. And our custom application, Logger, is hosted on a completely different URL. And because this is a web application that we built and hosted on Heroku. The Pro, however, it's not a completely separate application, right? As it is in an iframe on the Journey Canvas. Marketers can go in and customize it from Journey Builder, similar to other activities. Right, in email, you can add subject line and sender profile and things like that. So you can also configure your custom activity to expose some of those configurations to the marketer so they can customize it per journey or per journey path. And here you can see that you can add an identifier tag, just a plain text, and you can also select that those data bindings or field mapping for first name and last name. And of course, it can access journey data and contact data from the journey that it's installed on, or rather on the journey that it's dropped on, right? It's installed on an overall organization, but you can drop it on any journey. And here is a very simple view of some of the data points that might flow in and out of your custom activity. The Journey Canvas will have information like journey ID, journey version, the name of the journey, and the configuration for all the other activities you have in the journey. It will, of course, have journey data that's coming from that entry source, or maybe from other like wait until event activities that you have. And Logger, your custom application, will have its own set of data, like the ID tag that we have in here, or a unique code, which could be a coupon code or a registration code or something like that. And you can flow this data back and forth between the Canvas and your custom applications. And if you're familiar with web in general, there is a problem here. The problem is that if something is in an iframe, you can't have data flow between the parent, meaning the Journey Builder Canvas, and your application with much ease. And this is for web security purposes, right? If iframes could access data from the parent, then we'd be in trouble with all those ads that we see on the internet. That's why, just from a web security standard, if something is an iframe, it cannot access data that is part of its parent, meaning Journey Builder. So there must be some other protocol that we use to do that data exchange. And this is where post messages come in. Post messages are way of channeling data through different frames, in this case, Journey Builder Canvas and Logger, in a strict pre-configured way. So Journey Builder will have a set of data that it wants to send to any custom activity. They have already configured them on their end. And we tap into those configurations. We pass messages back and forth only in those strict channels that have already been decided, so that there is no data corruption. We don't access any data from the canvas. And Salesforce uses a library called Postmonger to do that. But it could, in theory, be done with other libraries and other sets of post messages. However, since we're building on top of Salesforce's Journey Builder, we need to adhere to those protocols that they have set to do data flows. Now, what are those Postmonger events? Whenever certain things happen in the journey, for example, when you drop the activity in the journey, or when you open the activity configuration widget, and when you click on the activity, it opens a modal so that you can add in those things, right? So, for example, when this shows up, or when you click done, there will be a done button in a real activity, or when you click cancel, right? When you save the journey, when you validate the journey, when you activate the journey, Journey Builder will fire certain events on its side. And in our custom activity, we need to listen to them so that we can act accordingly and change our data and whatever we need to do. Similarly, we can also, by we, I mean the custom activity can also fire certain events so that Journey Builder knows to tap into those and then change its configuration accordingly. For example, init activity is an event that's fired whenever the iframe is loaded. So whenever you click on the activity to open up that iframe, to open up the configuration widget, init activity is an event that's fired, and we can listen to them in JavaScript using syntax like this. Connection.on, and connection is an object that's provided by Postmonger, the library. And on an event called init activity, we will call the function onInit, right? And the onInit function can update the config payload, can do whatever your use case might demand. Similarly, there are other events like requested schema that Journey Builder responds to with real-time journey schema, right? What data is available? What entry data do you have? There's also requested interaction and this is where the Journey Builder responds with the real-time journey information. This is the more high-level information, not technically related to the data. So like ID, names, and activities. When the done button is clicked, or next and back if your activity has multiple steps in it. And I have the last one as an example, and these are all examples. There are much more events than these, but these are the ones that I've used in the custom activity that we'll be demoing today. The last one is the one that is fired by Logger to Journey Builder. And this is fired whenever we want Journey Builder to update the payload, which is our configuration. And talking about configuration, sorry, let's go here first. And then we'll talk about setting it up. Might have been in the wrong order. Okay, so talking about the configuration, I said we will fire update activity on our end to let Journey Builder know that something changed on our side, some config changed on our side, but what is that config, right? So let's look at all the components that a custom activity can have. The first one is the user interface, meaning the part that you actually see when you open up the modal. Earlier we had the logger, right? So all these elements is an HTML document, potentially powered by JavaScript that you see. So this is the UI of the application, but it has other components. The other important one is the configuration file that is shown on the right here. And this is the key to a custom activity, because this is like a contract that you make with Marketing Cloud, so that Marketing Cloud and custom activity both are in agreement what the custom activity is about. Right, so simple things like what is the icon going to be, or what is the category of the custom activity, what is the name and description, but much more data related and important things like what are the arguments going to be, right? What data do you expect from Journey Builder to flow into your activity? In this example, in this image, we need the email address, we need the subscriber key. This needs to be passed by Journey Builder when a contact passes through that activity. This is what we've defined in here. And we have also defined the URL that Journey Builder needs to call whenever a contact passes through that activity, and provide this information per contact, right? So if I pass through this activity, Journey Builder will call this URL, this API endpoint, pass in my email address and my subscriber key to that endpoint. And yeah, we have more things here, much more than this. Again, this is just a sample of all the configuration that you can do in the config file. There are also configuration arguments like what endpoint do you want Journey Builder to call when you save the journey, when you publish it, when you validate it. And also we can have multiple user interfaces. The one that we see is the configuration model. There are others called running and hover model that can show up sometimes when you hover over an activity that's already running. You can see the statistics of people that have passed through or other information as relevant to the journey. Those can also be configured here. We haven't done that for the demo activity. And there will also be a counterpart to all the arguments up here in the schema part, where you actually provide the schema of those arguments. So what are the data types going to be? Can they be nullable? So for example, when Journey Builder tries to pass in the subscriber key, is this optional? Does it always have to pass those arguments and such that? So this file is a key to the activity, because without it, Journey Builder doesn't know what to pass, what to do when a contact passes through the activity. This is the configuration that I was talking about when you say update activity. When we want to say somebody clicked into the configuration widget, right? Opened up Logger, and we'll see all of this in the demo later. Sorry if it's a little confusing. When you open up a configuration widget for Logger, this is what's going to show up. And say somebody comes in here, clicks on the main path, be a little small, clicks on that text box called main path, changes it to main path 2 or main path 3 or whatever. Then Journey Builder at this point doesn't know that happened, because remember, this is our application that is independent of Journey Builder. It has to somehow let Journey Builder know that change actually happened. And what we do in custom activity is that when somebody clicks done, we will, Journey Builder will first fire the click next event, right? And then we will know in this function, we will know that somebody just clicked on done, and they might have changed something in our UI. So we'll pull in all that information from the UI using JavaScript, and then in return, fire update activity post-monger event to and then pass in that updated configuration. We will change that config file. We will change the subscriber key, or in our case, we'll change the ID and set that to main path 2 or whatever the actual value was, and then send this entire file back to Journey Builder using that update activity event, so that Journey Builder now saves that configuration. So when you open that widget up the second time, it will be persisted in Journey Builder, and it will pass that updated configuration. Okay, 2 more components, and these are not strictly components in the sense that they're separate, because most of these have to be in the same file system, same folder, but they are more of a logical component, so you can think about them differently. The third component is the JavaScript file. This is the file that is the brain of the activity to handle data events. Right? This is, like we've been talking about, this is the one that syncs the Journey Builder canvas to the custom activity using the events. So all of these events that we have here, this is powered by JavaScript. And JavaScript also, of course, can pull in data from the user interface, like fields and text boxes, drop downs, things like that, and then do the necessary updates before syncing them to the Journey Builder canvas. It can also do the reverse. It can use the data that Journey Builder provides and then update the configuration file, update the UI, and so on. And so this is for the dynamic nature of the application. If your UI didn't have any fields, it was just a text display, then your need of JavaScript would be minimal because all it would do is pull in that data and update the UI. But if your logic is complex, for example, in our case, we are pulling in all the fields that are available and then filling out the drop down, with all the options dynamically in the journey. In those cases, your JavaScript could be a little complex. But anytime you need to do something with the data that Journey Builder provides, or pass data back to Journey Builder, you'll be writing JavaScript. The last one is the API server. And I think this might confuse some people, especially beginners. The user interface part of the web application is the thing that powers most of the activity. The part of the activity that a marketer will configure, everything that you see, right? Everything that you see here works without the API server, because by works, I mean should work at least, because Journey Builder might throw an error saying you don't have it, but it doesn't really touch the API server yet because nobody has passed through the journey. Right? When you're just configuring a journey, when you publish it, nobody has actually passed through the journey. You might need to validate it, but besides that, the API is only called when important events happen, right? Not when people click done, the marketer clicks done, or click next, or changes a text field, but when you need to validate the journey, or when you need to publish the journey, or when you need to when somebody actually passes through your activity. Those are the important key events in an activity, and those are the events that are that were used by Journey Builder to call your external service and API in particular. So in our case, all this URL up till the logger part is the application, but anything after that, the execute, there will also be /save, publish and validate. Those are the API endpoints that you can call, or Journey Builder calls, when these key events happen. But anything up to the logger is the UI part. So you need a full stack web application with a front end that will be used to configure the activity, and also a back end that will be used to process the different events and different life cycle of the activity. Cool. Okay. So I'll talk about this slide before pausing for a little bit. If you have questions. So say we have the web application built, both the UI and the API part. Now, what do we need to do to actually set this up in Journey Builder? We need to host the application, of course. Without that, we would not have that endpoint URL. And in the demo, we're hosting this in Heroku. Makes hosting pretty simple, but you can use any other hosting platform. And on the Journey Builder side, we would need to go and get an installed package set up. That part is not specific to a Journey Builder custom activity, but you would need install package for any other integration in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. But what's different here is that you need to add an activity of type Journey Builder activity to actually set up the Journey Builder activity. And the only thing that's necessary to pass in the Journey Builder activity is that endpoint of your application. And this is not the endpoint like execute. It will need to be an endpoint to the main file. So only up till logger for us, because that's the endpoint where this file structure exists. And in this file structure, you'll see everything that we talked about before in components. So the index.html is the UI part of the application. This will have all the, if you have bigger CSS requirements, styling requirements, than I have in Logger, which is pretty minimal in terms of styling, then you might also have a different CSS file to handle that styling. But since our demo was small, I've included all the stylings in that HTML itself. And the config file is the configuration file that we talked about before, that forms the contract between Journey Builder Canvas and your custom activity. to decide on what API to call, what arguments you need, what arguments you'll be sending out of the custom activity, and so on. And we'll need that, excuse me, we need that postmonger library to actually facilitate that communication between two iframes, the Journey Builder canvas and your custom activity iframe. And I think jQuery was also recommended. So if you, in your custom activity.js, which is the logical part of your application where it changes the UI, changes, like lets Journey Builder know of the postmonger events and so on, you could use jQuery to actually manipulate the UI. We haven't used it in Logger, just use plain vanilla JavaScript because simple requirements. But if your application is complex, maybe you want to use jQuery, or maybe you want to go and use React or Vue, because at the end of the day, if you have a JavaScript file that's compiled, you can use any library you want to build that UI. And at the top here, we also have images, which is the icon that needs to be displayed in the Journey Builder canvas. And you also set that up in the config file like we saw before, right? That icon will be referenced up here in the config file. And there's also an option to do a smaller icon. There are way more options than I've shown here. Please check out the documentation to find the full sets of configurations that you can do in your config file. And yeah, that's about it. If we have a web application that's hosted externally, that has postmonger event definitions on how to handle the data, and you have an install component in your Journey Builder org with a component of type Journey Builder activity that has the URL of your application with this file structure, you will have a Journey Builder custom activity show up on your canvas without any errors, and you can pull it into the canvas. Now, once you click on it and be able to configure it, that's extra steps that you need to do and handle all of those in custom activity.js. But at least if you have this file structure hosted externally and add this component, it will show up. It will show up and you can drag it in. Okay. I'll pause for just a second and see if we have any questions. Okay, I have a question here. How can I validate an API endpoint within the Journey Builder custom activity UI? I have an API that fetches content blocks from a third-party platform, and I want to display the latest content block in the UI. I create an image carousel on the third-party platform, and I want to ensure that it's shown on the custom activity UI in real time as soon as the content is created on the third-party platform. This is interesting because, so depends on where you want to show it. If you want to show it in the configuration UI, like here, then you would need to make an external API call like fetch request in your JavaScript file. However, that if you want to do that, really depends on your security needs, right? Because if you make calls from the front end, from the JavaScript, then you can't hide anything like secrets or API keys. So you'll not be able to make any secure calls to the external endpoint. But if the external API is totally like a public API, then you can make a call using JavaScript, a fetch call, or use a library like Axios, fetch call, and then update the UI whenever you get that in. That totally works. But a recommended way to interact with a third party is to use those API endpoints, like execute, only the execute one really, that will bring in the customer data when they pass through the activity, and then call a third-party API from that from that point forwards before responding to the journey builder. And now I understand that this probably doesn't help you show something in the UI. API call blocking my calls, force error. Okay, that good point. So I was saying that if you want to do a front end call, you can do a fetch call from your UI to an external service. However, the external service can be set up to either okay, I'll say one thing and then we should take that in more detail at the end of the session because I don't want to use I want to go through the demo first. But what I'll say is that if you make an API call from the front end to that activity, then it's up to that server, up to that third party to either accept or not accept the calls from your application. However, if you can do that from other front ends, right? If you could do that in an application by itself, and if Journey Builder specifically is blocking because of CORS, then that could be a whole another issue that we need to dive deeper into. Okay. Thanks for the question. Cool. Okay, now let's look at some data binding syntax. And this might look a little disconnected, but when we go through the demo, hopefully this will be more clear. Just wanted to quickly mention how data binding syntax works in Journey Builder. In general, this is not only related to our custom activity, but this is how it works under the hood. This is how it works for some activities like updating customer update data activity. I think it's called data extension update. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but this activity, update contact, but it actually updates your data extension. Yeah, in those activities also, this is how the syntax looks like. And it's based on something called a mustache template language library, just because the curly braces look like mustaches. The expressions here are case sensitive. So for example, let's look at the first name field. The first name has this syntax because this is coming in from a Salesforce object entry event. Whenever a lead is created, the journey is triggered. So Marketing Cloud flags this as an event because under the hood, it is an event of somebody being created in the CRM. And this is the internal object representation of that entry event. Like Salesforce creates an internal object that represents all contact coming into your journey. And then the last part is the field name, which is lead's first name, lead last name. And you might have noticed that at the very end, everything is the field, right? The thing we that actually care about is at the end, which means in subscriber key, it's the key, email is the email, unique code is at the end. And if this last part, if your field contains a space or colon or other special characteristics, please use double quotes. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Single quotes didn't work. That tripped me quite a bit in the beginning. So double quotes is safe for all field names. And you might have also noticed that they have different syntax depending on what they are. So some things are static, meaning they don't need to change per journey. For example, contact.key and interaction defaults.email will always be your subscriber key and the default email for your subscriber, no matter what journey you are on. So these things can be hard-coded in your config file. For example, here in the in arguments that we want Journey Builder to pass in, we have this in the config file as default values because these won't change from journey to journey. These won't change if you have multiple activities in your canvas. They will always be the same. Contact.key will always be your subscriber key. Interaction defaults.email will always be your subscriber email. However, things like the unique code that my custom activity will output. This will change, right? Because this might be a different activity. So REST 3 could be REST 1, REST 2. That's how Journey Builder classifies the order of the activity in your canvas, if they are REST activities. And you could also have completely different data extension name. For example, if your journey had an entry event, the entry type of data extension. So these things need to be dynamically populated by JavaScript when the activity is actually being configured. So you can't just populate them here because you wouldn't know what fields even are there in the journey before you drop the activity in the canvas. So these will be handled in a dynamic fashion. And all expressions like these are evaluated during publication. And if you put in an object that doesn't exist, or wrong syntax, then it's not going to let you publish the journey. And also Marketing Cloud every hour checks for the validity of these expressions. And if any of them fail during those validation checks, then the journey is also disabled. Cool. And okay, I was going to talk about the security. Excuse me, but looking at the time, it might be better let's hop onto the demo, and then we'll come back to the security. Okay. All right. So okay. So I had this journey created. However, I think it might be thinking, okay, I was going to create a new journey, but let's look at this first. So let's just do a new version and then see the activity being configured. Okay. So as briefly said before, we have an entry event. It's a standard entry event of Salesforce type. And this will be fired every time a lead is created. This might be a little small. Okay. Every time a lead is created, and it's going to pass in all this data. Lead's email, has opted out email. These might be standard fields, and then ID, of course. But we have also chose to bring in the first name and the last name. And let me drop in logger. You see that it'll show up in the custom section, but you could have it show up in other sections. And this is defined by the activity type in your config file. So here the category is custom. That's why it shows up in the custom type. You can also define this in your installed package, but whatever you set in the config file will override that. So we have said that it's custom, shows up here. You can drag it in. And when you drag it in, it's not configured yet. So it shows it's a little darker. But once you open it up, you can see that this has a default text as we've set up in the custom JavaScript file. This is the default if this journey is new, if it has never been configured. Sorry, if this activity is new, if it has never been configured. But I can change this to anything. So we'll change this to bootcamp demo tag. And then we can also map the first name and last name. Oh, sorry, I should probably give the context of the custom activity first. So as the name suggests, this activity is supposed to log all of your journey entrants that go through this activity into an external system. And to actually help you analyze the journey path along with your customer information, we're also sending an identifier tag so that you can identify which path or which journey, however you want to set up that tagging, that tagging nomenclature. And in addition, we're also giving marketers an ability to map first name and last name, because these could be different things, right? And I agree this is a little more simplistic and rigid for demo, because first name, last name You probably will have that in your data extension, but you could have more complex requirements, right? So if you could have, I don't know, you could have like a different preferred phone number, and there could be like 5 different phone number fields. So you're letting your marketer choose what field they actually want to log in the system. All right, so let's change these to first name and last name, because those are the mappings we want to do. And as I was saying before, this is done in real time. So it knows that my journey has all this information. It has leads information, these 5 different data points. And it also has the interaction endpoint. And these exist because, let's click done. Those 2 exist because you can see that logger also exists before it. So any output arguments that this activity has, this activity will see, and so on. This activity's output will be seen by this, not only by custom activities, it will be seen by other activities down the line. So for example, if I open the first activity, this won't have any interaction things because, well, no other activity precedes it. But if I open this one, now this should have 4 different interaction fields available to map, because 2 from here and 2 from here. You can see that it has REST 1 success. It also has REST 3 success. And one is for one of them, and then the other is for the other. And this is confusing. I wish this were more clear, as in this would have the activity's name and then the type or something like that. But this is how Marketing Cloud names keys your activities using REST dash the order of them. Yeah, so that is what it is. And now that we have configured this, I'll delete the one that was originally here. Now what we're doing is we have 2 outputs of this activity, and you can see that these are persisted. We have bootcamp demo tag now and last name, first name. And we are using, in the config file, we had 2 out arguments. One is success, that determines whether the API call to the backend was a success. And the backend will also return with a unique code, which could represent a coupon code in a use case. And those 2 data points now can be used to do a decision split. And we're doing that here. This is invalid because I deleted the original one that was there. So let's edit that, remove that. And now here in journey data, you can see that our custom activity is part of that journey data because it has out arguments. And the arguments that you have available to do a decision on is success and unique code. So if it is successful, if that API call was successful, then we're passing them up through this path. And if it is not, we're waiting for a day, and then we're logging it again. We're attempting it again. This is not the only way to do retries. You actually can do retries through that config file, but this is one way. Maybe your server is down for a day, you have maintenance. I don't know. This depends on your use case, but you can do things like these. And once that decision has been made, if a contact goes to this activity, that means they are successfully logged and they have a unique code that's generated in that external endpoint. And reading the original documentations, I thought we could use those out arguments directly in an email, right? Because if you have a coupon code that's generated in an external system, it's only reasonable that you should be able to use those in an email, but apparently you cannot. So you need an intermediate data extension. And I'm using the update contact event to update an intermediate data extension that I'm calling logger contacts, and I'm passing all these values. These are not really required. So we can ignore that for now. All you could do is have a subscriber key and the logger unique code in that as field values in that data extension, so that you can log all the coupon codes that come in for that contact. And once you do that, your data extension will be filled in. So let me also show that. Okay. Your data extension will be filled in with those, with the data values that's coming in from that API. And all right, so this is the data extension. A lot of test records. You can see that it logs in for now, logs the subscriber key, the unique code. It logs the timestamp where that happened, also the email, first name, last name. But as I was saying, the only important thing that you could log is subscriber key and logger unique code. And this is just for, this could just be for intermediate purpose, right? So that your email could use it. So you could use retention settings and erase all the data that's coming in a day or in a few hours, depending on the complexity of your journey, so that once it's here, now we can go to the email and this is normal AMP script job, right? Because if it's already in there, then we can use simple thing like lookup to look up that unique code. What we've done here is just use the lookup function in AMP script, use that data extension, find that value, find that field column in the data extension using the subscriber key. And in our case, the subscriber key is going to be here, but this could have been more dynamic as well. It works for demo purposes. The main idea is that you use a data extension to hold that value that's retrieved from your external endpoint, and then you use AMP script to populate that in your email. Okay. And let's go back to that syntax again, because this is the syntax that we were talking about when we said must-have syntax. For contact key, it's easy. It's always contact.key. For logger unique code, now this depends on your activity. And if I go back now to my second activity to check what's available, you can see that REST 1 is no longer available. Now it's REST 3 for my for this logger, right? And we really want to use that instead because REST 1 no longer exists. So I need to go back here, if this were to work, and then change this to REST 3, because that's what I want this column of the data extension to be mapped to. Interaction.rest3.unique code is the unique code that's outputted by my custom activity that's before that update contact activity. So once I do that, that should be good. And then we're sending the email and we're ending the journey. Cool. And you can also see that those configurations are really activity specific. So every instance of your activity will have different configuration. If I open this, this still says bootcamp demo tag, but this one says second path, and this could have totally different mappings. So Journey Builder saves these configurations per activity and not just one for one custom activity. Cool. Okay. Now we have about 5-7 minutes. And I want to talk about the JWTs. And I know this is not enough. There's much complexity. There's like server code to look at. There is also the JavaScript file to look at, because what we saw here was just a shell, but it was kind of impossible to cover in an hour session. Hopefully this is a good introduction. If you have questions, I will look at them and we'll answer them maybe in the hands-on session tomorrow. Or we could also do another session. We'll let you know. Okay, final thing I want to say is security with JWTs, how to use this. There is so first, why is this necessary? Is because your application endpoints, your APIs, right? For example, in our case, the Cervelo, whatever, Journey Builder activities logger execute. This is a totally public endpoint in the sense that it has no authentication. You are not logging in to access those. The Journey Builder doesn't log in. But you obviously don't want anybody to call that, right? You could just go to Postman or other activities, other applications will call you URL. So what we could do to secure is ask Journey Builder to encode all of the payload that it sends to our API endpoint using a signing secret. And JWTs, these kind of signatures are generally used to get your authentication authorization token. So when you log into any application, they will send you a JWT, which will have your information, your role, your permissions. That's generally where it's used, but it can really also be used to do any information verification. So Marketing Cloud uses this to send encoded messages. These are not encrypted. These are only encoded using your your secure signature. So what happens is if in the config file, I might have removed it, but here in your inside your execute, you have an option called use JWT. If you set that to true, then every call to that endpoint is going to be signed using that JWT signing secret that's automatically generated when you set up a installed package. There is another way to sign it using Salt and customer key, but we're not going to worry about that. This is the default that Journey Builder uses. And what you do then is take this signing secret, also put it into your environment in the backend, and use the same signing secret to verify whether a call made to that API is coming in from Journey Builder. Because nobody else would have this signing secret. Nobody could sign the payloads. Nobody could sign those requests using this secret. So you can be sure that if the signature is verified, and we are using an external library to do that, called JSON Web Token. And if it verifies using that same signing key, then you can be sure that the API calls are coming from Journey Builder. And you can proceed with doing sensitive things like creating a log or generating coupon code or things like that. Okay, I think that is all I had. Of course, would also have liked to share the entire code, but unfortunately, we're out of time today. Thanks for all the questions. Let me go see if I can go through some of them before we end. Where do you define the arguments that can be used in the decision split? Okay, that is defined in out arguments in your, okay, I haven't shown that here, but we'll share that code. Okay, we'll share the entire code for this custom activity and let you know where that is. But instead of in arguments, so just like how in arguments are the arguments that Journey Builder sends to your application, there is also something called out arguments that defines the output arguments from this, from your custom activity to Journey Builder so that it's available for decision split and other activities like the update contact activity. Would you show another use case in custom activity? I'm not sure what the question means. Do you mean where else could you use this? Generally, the use cases are either you're sending data to an external system or you're pulling data in, right? For sending data, you could think analytics like we're doing right now with logging, or, excuse me, you can also think of proprietary systems. Like if you have a feedback form, for example, in your cloud base, and then you bring it in, and then you pass your customers into a journey. Maybe you have an external system that creates tickets for service representatives, right? You create a Jira ticket or any other ticket in an external system. That you could use custom activities for that, like a Jira custom activity, or you could do payments like PayPal payments in your custom activity. Probably not a good idea, but you never know, right? Use cases like that. So anytime you need to interact with an external activity, either let them know of something or you want to pull some data in. For example, you could enrich your data as well. So if you have a customer journey where a customer fills out only their email, first name, last name, and maybe they are regular customers, you could first check in your external system if they are part of your larger organization and pull in other data attributes, right? You already know their annual income, or if they have a house or something like that. You could have a larger, richer repository of data in an external system that you want to pull in real time, right? You might say, oh, we can pull that in using SFTP, we can bring them in, yes, but if you do that in real time, then you're only bringing in data that you really need. But of course, you're also using APIs that might slow down the journey. So really, it's a trade-off issue, whatever makes sense. If you have 1 million records in your external system, but you think only a dozen will pass through your journey, but it's really important for them to get those information and you don't know which tool it will be, it might be a good idea to do an external call in real time so that you're not bringing in 1 million records to serve those 12 people, right? So it's really trade-off to think about it. Okay, can do. Would you be able to provide the code? Yes, we will. I just couldn't think how. We'll probably push it to some public GitHub and then share the link through LinkedIn or in Hands-On or some other channel. Okay. Okay, I think we're done with most of the questions. Thanks everyone for joining. It was fun to put this together. The documentation for this is pretty sparse out there. So it was tough to even build a demo application, tougher than I thought it would be. Well, yeah, thank you. Who was the question about? So Bilal, if you want to talk about your course error.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Sandesh. So basically, so I also have work on the custom activities. So for that, like the thing which I faced, like the problem is like we can't call the API from the UI itself. Suppose I have to call any API to
Mm-hmm.
checking credentials, or suppose I have to call any API to get data from any platform. We can't do that. We will get this a cons error from the Salesforce. So like the suggested way is to call the API in the backend itself, but sometime what happen, like we have to show something on the UI. So for that, uh, also if we are calling the API at validation point, that
Mm-hmm.
that thing is also it is not possible. I don't know why. By like when we pass data on the validation point, it not pass same as the when we pass on the execute point. Okay, so if I have to validate some data, if it is correct or not, then it also gives like it will not show that response which it will show on the execute part. If you can, if you have any knowledge about that.
Okay, there are a couple of questions there. Let's take them piece by piece. The first one is that course error. Have you tried calling the same API through some other front ends, which is not
uh
another activity?
yeah, I try to call it from the cloud page, it shows same error
Okay,
of
then
code.
yeah, I'm asking that because we want to make sure this is if this is an error on the custom activity part or just the regular web part, right? And it looks like it's an error on the web part. Like I was saying before, the application itself, the API endpoint that you're calling, needs to allow requests from other origins. In Express, for example, you can install the course package that allows that. And if it's not set up like that, you cannot call that API from front end in anywhere, or rather from any other domains than wherever the API is. So in my example, um, if I were to call, since these are two different domains, right? If I set up an endpoint that's not in Cervelo Heroku domain, then I cannot make those calls from here unless I install that course package. Um, that's the course issue. However, there might be a bigger issue. You're saying, how do we display data that we bring in? For that, we would need to use a dynamic HTML. For Logger, what we're doing is we have a static HTML like this. We just have an index.html file, and that's going to be pulled in whenever the UI loads. However, you could have a dynamic server set up so that before it gives the index.html to Journey Builder, it's going to do that external call. It's going to populate that HTML with all the data and then return that resulting HTML. So the HTML already has embedded data in it so that people can see it. The marketers can see it during configuration.
Okay, so I can't do just like I can call, for example, if I have some other platform like Mailchimp, and I have to show some emails of those Mailchimp platform, and I want to integrate with that, so I
You
can
cannot
do
do
that.
that in the front end now.
Okay. Okay, understand. And how can we validate, like if I'm passing some credential, And as it happened, like when we activate the custom activity, like generally save
Right.
then validate, all this step will be happen. So how can we like validate if the credentials are correct or not?
What do you mean by credentials? Is this during
The
validation?
third party, yeah, third party credential, like calling the API from the backend.
And what are you passing this credential from? Are you saying the credentials will come from the activity configuration wizard?
Yes, yes, yes.
So for
Yeah,
example,
passing for example, like your logger, if I'm
uh,
passing some values from here, okay, at the validation point when you activate the journey, okay,
uh,
if you pass some wrong credential, it will show you like a red error, and like you can say
right.
warning or error, it is not correct credentials. It called the API and then told you like it is not correct credentials, something like that. Can we do that? Or
That is an interesting point. So yes, you're right. So we should be able to do that using the validate endpoint, but right, in the validate, you also have an endpoint. However, I'm not aware of, yeah, I don't know if you can actually pass custom data in there. I know that Journey Builder already passes the ID version and the activity ID,
Mhm.
but I don't think you can pass, but I'm trying to think of. Yeah, I haven't had any experience in passing custom data in there, but that's a good question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
will.
can look into that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Cool. If nobody
Yeah.
else has any other questions. Okay, I see that you've also answered a question, Bilal.
Oh,
Thank
one more thing, like so like for the version control, okay, so suppose we are creating custom activity and we are also managing the versions, so how it is suggested to like basically handle those things?
if you are you also changing your activities based on versions?
Yes, yes, so basically I provided to multiple customers, okay, now I don't want them to basically see the changes which I am doing on the custom activity. Okay, so for that, what will be the suggested way to basically handle this thing? So, for example, a new version come with new features on my custom activity. Then how I can handle that?
You're saying you're using are you using the same application on the back end?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Um, then that shouldn't be possible, right? Because when Journey Builder loads this, it's gonna load that endpoint, and if it's the same application, I would recommend maybe, but then you would have a lot of applications, right? If you copied it over.
Yeah. So like
Maybe
in
you
the
could
new.
do, sorry, I was just thinking in real time here. So in this activity, you have your, for example, in my activity, I have slash logger, right? That's my activity, and we can see that here. Slash, yeah. So this is an activity, but maybe you could do slash logger slash v1 instead of this, and then every time you are shipping this to a different client, you could do v2, v3, and so on, so that you're creating different folders for them. If you're not creating different folders or different endpoints, it's not going to be possible because Journey Builder doesn't have that configuration. It just knows your URL and it's going to load whatever loads.
One more thing related to this URL itself. So how can we disable this URL so it only enable to custom activity? So like so that any other person can't see this URL. It's
Um,
only.
to make it non-public.
Yes. So if I make it non-public private, then custom activity will how it will be able to show that UI.
Yeah, I mean, these kind of things are always a little sketchy on the
Hmm.
web. So you could technically look at the referrer URL, because if somebody is trying to iframe in, because Journey Builder is only going to call your activity in an iframe, right? So it's going to have the Journey Builder's signature in it. For example, in one of the request calls, you will have this URL there, either in the refer or like some sort of parent. So you could check that. You could take your refer and then make sure that this is the one. Otherwise, you just send some other HTML. You need to have a dynamic HTML there, but that would be one way to do it. Another way to do it would be after you load the activity, you check the parent, and then I'm trying to think if you can even check the URL. But you can check the URL, then you show some custom error using JavaScript. But the former is a bit more secure using the URL.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, that's generally not recommended or kind of silly, because that doesn't work if you're using Postman or other sources. You can get it anyways. Yeah, it's not foolproof.
Yeah, and also if you can suggest some documentation if we have other than this Salesforce documentation, any link or blogs, something like that, very useful, any useful things which you can share with us.
Yeah, I've realized that's a little missing when I was preparing for this session. So the only ones are really just the official is not complete. It doesn't help you completely build it end to end, but it has some good information. Also, learning about data binding helps. This is where you learn about how like mustache templates work, how you reference different linked contact attributes, also Postmonger events reference, what events are available and all that. But more than that, I couldn't find any documentation online, unfortunately. Maybe we'll work on creating some articles in our hands-on SFMC site and also post the code. We're yet to decide on that.
Okay, okay, great. Thank you for answering all my questions. Thank you so much.
Of course, thanks for joining. All right, thanks everybody.